Good morning, PhinManiacs listeners, and welcome to the Scouting Combine. Brandon Liguori, Hussam Patel, and Hussam. There's a lot of big games that we are going to be looking at today, and really for the Miami Hurricanes, it has to be redemption week because the way they suffered a 44-13 loss last Saturday against top-ranked Alabama. But before we get into everything, how's everything going, buddy?
Oh man, everything's been going good. I'm off of work, 3 days off of work. So there's that. I'm not as tired, finally getting some sleep in as well. And I mean, in about an hour, big noon kickoff between Oregon and Ohio State. So I'm pumped up for that.
And that's really, the biggest storyline today's game. Oregon, Ohio State. It's in Columbus, which is always a tough environment. But really, the main thing right now for the Oregon Ducks, if they want to have any chance today, defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau, who suffered an ankle injury in last weekend's season-opening win versus Fresno State. Hussam, what is the latest on that? And if he is able to play, today,
he's out. He's confirmed out.
Okay,
so he's not playing at all. So
it's really going to be up to Oregon's defense to really step up. So do you think that will automatically? Because I believe the latest line was Ohio State by 19.5. So they're basically giving Ohio State a near 3 touchdown edge. Do you somehow see that spread going even greater now because of Thibodeau's absence?
I predicted in my preview article because, look, Ohio State struggled a little bit against the Golden Gophers in the opener, but they built a lot more credit with their bettors in recent years because of how they've played within the second half. So I see, the aerial attack of Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson stressing out that Ducks secondary being led by Verone McKinley and Mikael Wright as well. And I'm keeping an eye out on Mikael Wright. The Buckeyes have a fearsome fivesome on the offensive line, which surrounds excitement for freshman running back Travion Henderson, who had an absolute game last week against the Golden Gophers, and quarterback C.J. Stroud. Now, the Ducks looked a little bit shaky at times in a win over Fresno State, but Fresno State is not a slouch at all. And with Kayvon Thibodeau being out, that defense has to step up in place of him. He's a potential top 5 prospect, so I'm not surprised he's sitting out this game. The biggest question is the Ducks secondary against Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. But of that 19-point spread, I say Ohio State makes it 15 points. Ohio State 35, Oregon 20.
So we talked, and I'm glad you mentioned Chris Olave because he was explosive in that season-opening win this past Thursday night on the road at Minnesota. Do you see that same dominance continuing today? And really, Thibodeau's absence is obviously huge.
Well, that depends on who's covering Garrett Wilson. If it's Mikael Wright, if he's being bracketed by Wright and Verone McKinley as well, that may open up things for Chris Olave to get more touches than Garrett Wilson, because there's a big debate on NFL Draft Twitter going out. It's either Chris Olave is wide receiver 1 or Garrett Wilson is wide receiver 1. For Ohio State's benefit in game, both of them can be wide receiver 1s at any point. So the Ducks secondary is going to have to look out and see who's matching up against who. Who can we give the benefit of doubt to not make the catch, to not break away for a big play? So I think it's going to be an equal balance between Wilson and Olave.
So really for tonight, right? Manny Diaz's Miami Hurricanes returning home. I'll be there, Hard Rock Stadium against the Appalachian State Mountaineers. And really, if you're a Hurricanes fan, if you're a Hurricanes media member, and especially if you're Manny Diaz and a Miami Hurricanes football player, you're obviously disappointed from last week's. Listen, it's the number 1 team in the country. That's why they are number 1. Miami just really couldn't get anything going both on the offensive and defensive side. So what are, 2 keys really for the Hurricanes to jump back in the win column and, get that first win of 2021?
Well, definitely we saw what the Alabama Crimson Tide did against the Miami Hurricanes. They set the tone early defensively and offensively. That's exactly what they have to do against Appalachian State. Last week, I believe, Rhett Lashley, Manny Diaz, and the entire offense played very, very conservatively, just running the ball when the run game couldn't even get going, doing quick 3-4 yard passes and not getting anything out of it as well. So they're going to have to go for big plays to test out this App State defense. If it works, you're going to see explosive plays and explosive touchdowns as well. In order to make that happen, you need to have great trench play along the offensive line. Zion Nelson, he's probably the only guy on the offensive line that could be drafted. The rest are average to below average, and they need to protect De'Ara King and get this running game going. If they're able to do those things, I think they'll be able to beat App State handily. If not, it could be a close game, but I still predict the Hurricanes to win this one.
A lot of people were really possibly smelling an upset because Appalachian State last season, they did score over 30 points per game. And I know their competition is obviously not against the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the Ohio States, but this team is probably going to be a very interesting team to watch. And the quarterback on the Mountaineers, Chase Bryce, who was a former Duke student, so Miami's very familiar with that, being in the ACC. What do you think what do you think, Hussam, Miami's front seven is going to have to do to pressurize Bryce and, force early turnovers to get that turnover chain out?
Well, in order to do that, they're going to have to set the tone very, very early. I mean, they need to put consistent pressure on Chase Bryce. Bryce needs to prove he can produce under that pass rushing pressure as a starting quarterback at App State. But he struggled last year as a starter at Duke. When he was at Duke, Bryce faced about 1/3 of pressure on his dropbacks with the Blue Devils and only completed near 40% of his passes with 2 touchdowns and 8 picks. That is it. That's it. And he was sacked 31 times when under pressure. So if that App State offensive line can't hold it, and if Bryce is not able to move in the pocket, we know how Manny Diaz gets creative with his blitz packages and exotic schemes. They do kind of what the Amoeba defense does with Brian Flores and the Miami Dolphins. They send 5-6 people around the line and have one linebacker being in cover 1 or cover 0 the entire time. It didn't work against Alabama because Alabama, they're basically an NFL team. App State, they're a good college, but they can't handle that type of pressure against star defensive players. And I think Manny Diaz is going to send the house at Chase Bryce early on to make him make mistakes and force turnovers and allow the Miami Hurricane to have that buffer early on where if they make mistakes in the 3rd and 4th quarter, they'll still be okay.
So we both expect the Hurricanes to enter the win column tonight, correct?
Yeah, I expect them to win tonight.
Okay, so Tampa, Florida, right? USF, the Florida Gators will be there. I wanted to briefly just touch on this game because there was about 2 college football analysts who believe that the Gators are on possible upset alert. I think the latest spread that I looked was 28.5. Hussam, what did you see from last week? The Gators, FAU. It wasn't a 56-7 type blowout win for Dan Mullen's squad, but it was good to see the Gators with that rushing ground game. So what do you expect that you will see from the Gators today? And do you think that there will be, any possible chance that the Gators put up 40, 45 points on the scoreboard?
I don't know about 40, 45 points if Emory Jones is a starter. I really don't think Emory Jones should be the starter for the Florida Gators. He was 17 for 27, 113 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. He was, with all that preparation and with being, the backup to Cal Trask, learning about that offense from last year, it was not what you expected from him. Now, I'm willing to give him that benefit of doubt. Everybody is rusty. It's the beginning of the season, but you had an entire offseason to prepare for that first game. And that's the best you could do as a Florida Gator quarterback. Now, more importantly, he knows he has to be better. But, it's not going to be up to him because he doesn't need to do good against the USF Bulls. What I expect the Gators to do is to stay on the ground this weekend against the Bulls, who allowed almost 300 rushing yards during its 45-0 thrashing at the hands of the NC State Wolfpack. So this is going to be the first meeting between the schools since 2010. And if the Gators can get the ground game going, they'll win the game easily.
So the site of College Game Day this morning is in Ames, right? Iowa State. I'm a fan of defensive football. I'm sure you are as well. So, Sam, who do you see winning that game today? Because I know it's going to be a neck-to-neck battle. And remember, Iowa State has not won a game in this rivalry since 2014. So, for the Iowa State Cyclones, what is quarterback Brock Purdy going to have to do to maybe, I guess you can call it an upset, even though the Cyclones are a current 3.5-point favorite?
Well, it's going to be up to Brock Purdy and Matt Campbell's offense to stay balanced against this Hawkeye defense. It's number 9 versus number 10. So it is a top 10 battle. And it's really going to determine what the college football playoff standing is going to look like. And also bragging rights in the state of Iowa. Now, look, Iowa State entered the 2021 season with expectations it has never had, thanks to 6-year coach Matt Campbell, who signed a massive contract extension. And some NFL teams even wanted to interview him for head coaching jobs. But the main issue that's been hampering them is slow starts. The Cyclones are just 8-11 in September under head coach Matt Campbell. And I was a little bit weary last Saturday in a 16-10 win over UNI, Northern Iowa of FCS. Now, big brother, the Hawkeyes, Iowa Hawkeyes are coming into town, and they're going to put Campbell's most glaring issue in Ames into focus. They're 0-4 against head coach Kirk Ferentz's Hawkeyes, who have ripped off seven straight wins overall dating to last season. I mean, more impressively, Iowa has not given up more than 24 points in a game since 2018, and Iowa has played 23 straight games without surrendering 25 or more points. I mean, this is the longest streak in all of college football among Power 5 teams. Even the Alabama Crimson Tide, who are known for having a stellar defense. The Hawkeyes are number 1 in Big Ten scoring defense, number 3 in rush defense, and pass defense. I just don't know if Matt Campbell will be able to pull off this win. But I think, this stout Hawkeyes defense could possibly keep a talented Cyclone squad in check, and the Hawkeyes offense will do just enough to win this high-stakes showdown. Now, if we're looking at the lines right now, it's about 4.5 towards Iowa, and the over-under is 45. Now, they're playing in Iowa State, which may give a little bit of leeway to the Cyclones. And in my previous article, I predicted the Cyclones to finally beat that streak and win 24-20, because I think they're going to rely on Breece Hall to get the running game going. He's one of my top running backs in this prospect class of 2022. Brock Purdy will need to lean on Charlie Kolar, that tight end, to mismatch against the Hawkeyes linebackers, who are okay in coverage but not the best. And Charlie Kolar is a 4-star tight end as well. That defense will have to slow down Iowa's running game and put pressure on quarterback Spencer Patras.
So that's one big game that we can label as significant. Another significant game tonight, and I'm sure you might agree with me on this. Washington and Michigan. It's a night game for Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh. And really, if you're a Washington football fan, similar, like I said, if you were a Miami Hurricanes football fan, you have to be extremely pissed off. And especially for Washington, losing to an FCS Montana school last week at home, that is just utter embarrassment. What are the keys, Hussam, for the Huskies to jump in the win column? And we also have to talk about the status of Jim Harbaugh, because it seems like if he can't get this done, he hasn't gotten it done in recent years against Ohio State. But if he can't get it done on primetime with everybody pretty much watching, unless you're a UM fan, because I believe the UM game starts at 7 and the Michigan game starts at 8, so those games will be combined. But how do you see this Washington football team? So I believe the current spread is 6.5, so they're giving Michigan pretty much a whole touchdown.
I don't agree with the bettors here. They are giving Michigan a 6.5 spread. The over under is 48.5. Now look, the Huskies should not have any excuse losing to Montana, an FCS team. However, I do want to know Montana has a great football program and a great coach. So they're not like a Weber State or Mercer. Okay, they're not a team like that at all. They can cover. They can win football games against good Power 5 teams and hold it close. Now, Washington looks to recover and exact aggressiveness to start off against the Wolverines. Dylan Morris, their quarterback, might be a bit undersized, but he showed enough promise against a tough Montana defense, and he's going to be tested again this week against Don Brown's Wolverines. This is the first meeting between these old school Rose Bowl rivals since 2002, and we know the Huskies lost 13-7 to perennial FCS powerhouse Montana at home last weekend. But the good news is that Huskies defense is spectacular. They only allowed 232 total yards. That is it. We know how Jim Harbaugh's offense has been the last couple of years, but they might have found a quarterback in Cade McNamara. Now, he's going to be tested by Washington's defense. That defense is pretty damn good. They have, Zion Tapola Fatoy. He might be an asterisk for this game. I believe he may be injured. Star linebacker and edge who looks to replace Joe Tryon, who, had a good game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Dallas Cowboys. He's a 4-star guy as well and looks to put pressure on Cade McNamara. And 3-star cornerback Trent McDuffie, who could possibly be a top 15 pick for the Huskies in this year's draft. So it's really going to come down to that Washington defense stopping Cade McNamara, who didn't have to do much against Western Michigan. The Huskies' run defense is solid, and I honestly don't think Michigan and Hassan Haskins will be able to produce those 336 rushing yards like they did against Western Michigan. Giles Jackson, he was a guy who transferred from Michigan to the Huskies, and the Wolverines don't have star wide receiver Ronnie Bell, as he has an injury, and it's a huge blow for them. So I expect Giles Jackson to have a revenge game today. Now, will he have a couple touchdowns? I'm not so sure yet. We'll have to see how Washington's offense reacts to what Don Brown does, usually on his defense. So I expect Washington to pull this one out in Michigan, 30-23.
So Hussam is calling the upset tonight and the Huskies to win by a touchdown. Listen, I see a Miami Dolphins flag on the wall behind you. So what further ado to speak quickly about Miami's season opening game tomorrow afternoon. You have Tua Tagovailoa, you have Mac Jones, you have really two Alabama quarterbacks that know each other very, very well. And there's an interesting tweet that I was going to put out later tonight that Jalen Hurts, Tua, and Matt Jones, 3 first-round Alabama quarterbacks, all starting for their respective team tomorrow. How is Miami going to get this done? Because we know Foxborough is a very tough environment. The Dolphins, they did win their season finale there in 2019. But aside from that, they haven't won in Gillette since 2008. I believe Chad Pennington was Miami's.
They won in Gillette in 2019, Brandon.
Excuse me?
They won in Gillette in 2019.
No, I know. I'm saying aside from that,
okay.
Aside from that, they haven't won since 2008. So this is obviously going to be a very tall task. But knowing that we're facing a rookie quarterback tomorrow, do you spell a win here? And really for cornerback it's Xavier Howard, and Matthew and I were talking about it this past Thursday night. Do we expect maybe a multi-interception type game?
Well, before we get on to that, I want to talk about our sponsor, BetUS. BetUS has all the games for college and NFL, so go ahead, check that out at betus.com. Promo code PhinManiacs for 125% sign-up bonus or a 200% crypto bonus. So if you guys like money, you guys want to win something on the games today and tomorrow, go ahead, sign up, BetUS, use promo code PhinManiacs. Speaking about the Dolphins, and then I'll circle back to another game which I want to keep an eye out later today. The Dolphins, I mean, it's mainly just three keys to the game. And if you guys saw it on my IG reel and it was out on Twitter through the PhinManiacs account, there's really only three keys to this game to beat the New England Patriots. It's going to be up to that offensive line who may or may not be without Austin Jackson. So either Greg Little or Liam Eichenberg will have to replace him. They're going to have to protect Tua Tagovailoa. That's it. That offensive line proved last season, even though they're pretty young, they're still learning. They proved they can't handle stuns, twist, and double A gap pressure near the guard and center combo. The philosophy is nowadays, with mobile quarterbacks, they can sense pressure coming off the edge and off the outside, and that's where quarterbacks prefer the pressure to come. They don't like it when a defensive lineman and linebackers are coming through the A gap right in their face and right at their feet because they can't shuffle. They don't have enough time to set their feet and get the ball out. So that's where I see a majority of New England sending the house right at Tua Tagovailoa's feet. So if Michael Dieter, Robert Hunt, and Solomon Kinley can hold up on that interior and protect Tua Tagovailoa well, and Tua is able to wiggle in the pocket and, dump off some passes to the running backs or wide receiver, get some quick 3, 4, 5 yards and move the chains, it will be a successful passing attack. Now, as for the running game, we're going to have to see how they do with Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, and Malcolm Brown, who could be a guy for the goal line. They'll need to get the ground game going. However, I did see a video clip earlier today where they were in where the Jets, I believe it was a couple years ago, they were in a 3-by-1 formation, and they used a couple of rub routes when the run game wasn't working because we know Bill Belichick likes to stop the run and dare people to pass the ball. So if they stop the run and their secondary, who's pretty good even without a couple key players, will dare you and make you to force turnovers. So if they use those rub routes with, Jaylen Waddle, Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant, and turn out 5, 6 yards and maybe even first downs, in my opinion, that'll be more effective than a ground game, say, that averages 3 yards per carry. The second key is to stop that New England running game with Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, and J.J. Taylor. New England's offensive line is pretty damn good, and Mac Jones does not need to do a thing other than hand the ball off against this Dolphins defense. If the Dolphins defense can prove they can stop the run, they'll win the game because they'll force Mac Jones to make errors, make really bad decisions, and capitalize on those errors to force fumbles, sacks, pressures, and interceptions. Maybe 1 or 2 to Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, Javon Holland, you name it. Whoever gets a pick, it's fine. Maybe we even get a Nick 6 from Nick Needham, Jason's guy, as well. The third key and is really winning that turnover battle. Miami has had, I believe, 22 consecutive games dating back to 2019 where they've had turnovers and won the game. If they're able to stay in the positives, they'll win the game. It's plain and simple as that. But if they don't do those things, I expect a Patriots win.
So speaking just quickly about rookie Jaylen Waddle, who will make his regular season debut tomorrow afternoon, are you excited to see him? I mean, I'm sure you are, but what exactly are you hoping to see from him exiting game one?
Well, I hope to see him get 6 or 7 touches because I have him on my fantasy. I hope he scores a touchdown as well. But outside of fantasy, I want him to be the guy for Tua Tagovailoa. The guy at Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama was Devonta Smith and Jaylen Waddle. Now, those two are very different type of wide receivers. But you have a plethora of wide receivers who have similar styles to Jaylen Waddle. It's Albert Wilson and Jakeem Grant. However, if Tua still has that chemistry with Jaylen Waddle, I mean, he's a great separator. I don't think anybody in the league can keep up with his speed on the defensive side of the ball. So if he's able to get open 10, 15 yards down the field with a defensive back trailing him 2 to 3 yards, I want Tua to throw him the ball, get those explosive plays, and get those touchdowns to be up early. Look, the Miami Dolphins set the tone early offensively last year in 2020 by being number one in first quarter points, which was around 6 to 7 points in the first quarter every single game. If they can do that with Tua and Jaylen Waddle and score early and put pressure on the New England Patriots to score, I think it'll be an effective offense, and that'll allow Mac Jones and the New England Patriots offense to be put under pressure and make them make mistakes.
So I believe there was one game, I believe, on the college side that you wanted to speak about before we, start wrapping up today's show.
Yeah, that's right. And I really wanted to talk about the Pac-12 10:45 game. I know it's Pac-12 After Dark and not a lot of people watch it, but you guys have to watch Pac-12 After Dark because those are some of the most unlikely underrated games ever. And we're going to be talking about BYU versus Utah. And it's one of the best rivalries in college football this year. They're back after a 1-year COVID-19 hiatus. It would have been interesting to see that 2020 BYU squad that went 11-1 with Zach Wilson to be able to win against a great defense in the Utah Utes. Now the Cougars get the chance this weekend, but it's a very tall task. They don't have the weapons Zach Wilson elevated last season. They have an offensive line, but without Brady Christensen, who was a mainstay. Now, the Cougars will get the chance, but it's pretty tall because Baylor has a pretty good defense led by linebacker turned safety DeMarvion Overshawn and Baylor transfer Charlie Brewer. He was serviceable for Utah against Weber State. He had about 233 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. But he'll need to prove his worth against a lacking Cougars defense. He might give BYU some fits. Now, the atmosphere should be roaring in Provo for an instant classic. And I do think, if you guys are up late, you want to, bet something and win some money, I would go ahead, place your bets on Utah and, have a fantastic night tonight.
And speaking of Zach Wilson, he will make his NFL regular season debut tomorrow when his New York Jets travel to Carolina and face former Jets quarterback Sam Darnold. I think before we wrap up today's show, Sam, I think it's appropriate that we talk about the 20-year anniversary of the September 11th, 2001 attacks on the Twin Towers. It doesn't have to be long, but I mean, since today is obviously 20 years, I think it is just very appropriate because obviously many, many lives were lost. And our country did, I mean, you have to face reality. Our country did suffer a terrorist attack, and it is what it is. But in your words, right, when you look back 20 years ago on that horrific day, what do you remember? I mean, I know I was 3 years old, so I really don't remember much. My sisters were a little bit older, so they kind of comprehend a little bit more. But from your eyes, Hussam.
And okay, so from my eyes, and I'm going to be super honest here and super truthful here, and it's not something a lot of people will like to hear. Now, I wasn't really born. Well, I mean, I was born, but I don't really remember the straight after effects of it. But I know what it was like for me and my family dealing with the repercussions of it. Obviously, what happened that day was horrendous. It was horrific. It was absolutely, shameful and vile. And I want to give our thanks to our servicemen and women who fought for us. The after effects still affects today in my life because I'm Muslim as well. And a lot of those, horrible terrorists that did that, they desecrated, our religion. It's simple as that. And growing up, I faced a lot of racism as a result of that. My family faced a lot of racism as well. And we couldn't proudly show and say, hey, this is our religion, this is our culture, blah, blah, things like that. And, we were told early on to keep it under locks, keep it quiet so we don't get a lot of hate, so we don't get a lot of racism. So, there were a lot of after effects facing not only, our servicemen abroad, but also at home too, who, I like to say I'm a proud American as well. So It's tough. It's tough for everybody involved in this process.
I thank you very much for just being open about it. Sharing your thoughts about it. And I mean, really, it's just really crazy that something like this happened already 20 years ago. It really feels like it really happened. Felt like really just yesterday. But listen, I hope you enjoyed today's games. I'll be at Hard Rock Stadium tonight, hopefully watching. Even though I'm not a diehard Miami Hurricanes fan, I'll be rooting for them. This very one Saturday, I will be rooting for Manny Diaz. I will be rooting for De'Aaron King. Hussam Patel, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure doing this show with you, and enjoy your Saturday, buddy.
Of course, you too, man. Enjoy the game. Let's hope the Hurricanes win.
And thank you guys for tuning in this morning. Hussam Patel, Brandon Liguori, and as always, fins up.
Fins up, baby.